can't see it when we go live now. So I see, there we are. We are live. The screen is a little bit small for me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show of today's Core 1A Plus study group. We got a lot to go through today. I've got all brand new questions. Hello, chat room. How's everybody doing? Hey, it's 2026. Happy New Year. Can we still say that? We're already sort of almost a week in. What is the standard for that? Do we wait a week? Do we wait until the middle of the month? Is it all of January? Can we say Happy New Year? I'd just like to say it all the time. Hey, Happy New Year. It's July. Why? Well, still, it is a Happy New Year. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody had a lovely holiday season. It's great that the holiday season is over, and it's sad that the holiday season is over. And here we are. Hope everybody's doing well. Oh, we got a lot to go through. We're doing super good. See, there's a chat room. Hello, chat room. Everybody's woken up. We're here now. Thanks for being here. A lot of folks saying Happy New Year. When we remember to put the correct year on our checks is when we can stop saying Happy New Year. Well, you don't hear, before I go live, I usually record the intro for the podcast, which is, hi, I'm James Messer. You're listening to the Core 1A Plus study group. It was recorded, and of course, on the date, I said recorded January 6, 2025. Nope. Restart. Say it again. I was even thinking before we started the live stream, how long will it be until I make a mistake with the year? It took about 17 seconds. That's how long it took. So is it a precursor for the rest of the study group? Let's find out. There's only one way to know. We're going to make that happen. Hope everybody's doing okay, though. The new year is upon us. I have recovered from the new year. I did see the fireworks at midnight. It was lovely. Had a nice party to go to. And that's one of those where it's so late. I need a little disco nap before we did a midnight event. Took me back to my college days. Make all of that happen. Okay, we've got all questions here. We got lots to go through. There's some exciting stuff happening here that we're working on. I think it's always at the beginning of the year. We always look and see, what are we doing this year? We're doing some great stuff this year. We got some fun things happening, just adding on, writing some new content. There's new courses or updated courses scheduled to release this year. We got a lot of stuff going on. So that's always fun. So it's much better than not having anything to do. I think that would be sad. Hey, Happy New Year, and that's me crying in the corner. Nope, not in this case. We got way too much to do. I don't have time for that. We can keep all of this going. All right, we're going to get started here in about 6.5 minutes, and we'll get things going. Is there a CompTIA study guide for the 1201, 1202? Well, of course, all of our training materials are updated to the 1200 series, and of course, all the CompTIA books and study materials are also updated as well. So I think at this point, everything's pretty much updated 1201, 1202, right? I mean, that came out in what, March of last year? Am I thinking February of last year? Somewhere in there. I think it retired in September, the old version. So certainly since September, everything has been the 1200 series. And of course, it's going to be around quite a while. We'll talk about that in a moment. You got plenty of time before anything changes. A lot of people are sending me messages. Where's the new version for 2026? There is not one. There will not be one because they update these things about every 3.5 years. So that's where that goes. If you would like to you can probably see our map that's right here where you can put your virtual pin in our pin cushion. You can do that right now by going to the URL that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. professormesser.com/QA. And if I did everything right, you will find yourself on the page where you can put that in place. When is our Security Plus study group? So if you want to know when any of our study groups are going to be, you can always find them on our calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. Where do we get the 1201, the 1202 updates? There are no updates to the 1202. The entire course was updated last year. So everything that you see that is marked 220.1201 or 220.1202 is the most updated training materials. And of course, that's all on our website, professormesser.com. Everything is there. and you will be in perfect shape. You'll find everything you need. In fact, there's the menu, the main menu of the site, there is a Core 1 and Core 2 pull-down menu, and the very first link is Start Here, and that will show you everything available to you for the 220-1201 or the 220-1202. Any study group or classes for the Security X? No plans for it currently, but who knows? I always keep my options open. We never know what's going on, but no plans currently for the Security X, which is different than the Security Plus. We'll offer a course for the new CompTIA Security AI. No, we will not be spending time on any AI courses as they are firing AI people around the world because they realized it doesn't work. No, I will not be creating a training course. In fact, the Security Plus AI is probably one of the few use cases where it actually would be useful to do this. But I think looking at the market right now, I think we're going to hold off on the whole AI thing. I don't see anything viable there. Nobody's really making it work yet. As soon as they make it work, I will make a course. We might be waiting a while. We might be waiting quite some time. Oh, man. It is, but that makes it easy for me. I do have other things that we are working on, however. Just because we're not doing security AI doesn't mean we're not doing something else. We got lots of things that we are doing, but it will be things that people can use. For example, we'll offer any Linux courses? No, well, I have Linux on my list, but that one also has not quite got the traction that I was hoping for yet. So we'll see. Again, that's another one. I have a big list of courses and things that we always reference. I'm always moving them up and down the list depending on where I think they are in the world of interest. So cloud-based, networking certs, security certs, all of those are valuable. We just need to find the right mix for people that need that type of thing. So we'll see. We've got, what else we have? Let me check. Oh, Mac Pro is not up. Let's get that lit up. Ding, there it is. Very nice. Cameras look good. We are recording. You can sort of see the Cylons going down here. Get rid of my lower third there real quick. So the Cylons are going down there. I need one more to make that happen. Get all of these going. Have to make sure we get through all of these. We have our Core 1 study group today, of course. That's where you are. We have a Course 2 study group we normally would do on Thursday, but if you look at the calendar, you will notice that it is happening on Friday this week, which is unusual. We rarely do a Friday live stream. We did one previously. Did we do one in December? December was kind of crazy. November was super crazy. November is where we crammed a bunch into a single group there. I saw Malk has joined us. Hello, Malk. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Hope everything's going well with you. There's it's kind of nice being here in the more tropical side of things. Although it did get kind of cool on New Year's Eve. We were out there in our jackets, in our coats on New Year's Eve here in Central Florida because it was 40. We didn't know what to do. Do cars still work when it's 40 degrees? We don't know. We've never seen that. It does get kind of cold here sometimes. I'm being a little facetious. It does get quite cold here at times. We got less than a minute to go. Make this happen. We're getting there. We are making it work. Probably move this over where I can see it, where you can see me. That looks good. This looks good. That is in good place. I think we're ready for a live stream. This is not the live stream part. I do get emails from time to time. People wondering why I've tuned in to watch the back of my head. And that's you'll be seeing this shortly. Do not worry. The live stream is actually, we'll make this work. It'll be there. We'll have this thing going on. And hopefully I've got some hard questions for you. I think the performance-based question is definitely a little bit more of a harder question. This is how cold it is here. I got a warming mat for my keyboard. That's how cold it is. I keep my hands under here. Oh, because it just gets a little cold. Oh, look, it's top of the hour. Enough of the chit-chat. We can now go to our keynote we can choose the green light. Very nice. That means that we can do a live stream. That means we're ready. Let's see if I can remember how all of this works. We should push a button here. We should push a button here, and we should do a live stream. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2026 Professor Messer CompTIA A+ study group. This is the study group where, if I was to give you a view of my world, you would be able to see me here. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the live stream where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA Core 1 A+ exam objectives, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them along with us. We have so much to go through today. There are a lot of exciting things that are happening on this side, but I would like to have you, if you are here live, join us and answer interactively as we ask these questions. The way that you would do that is to pop open a new browser window and head over to the URL that is on your screen. It is professormesser.com/QA. I need to put my little ring around my mouse there so you can see it a little better. professormesser.com/QA. It's a great place to go to answer any of these questions. And if you would like to see if it is working, you can answer one of these questions right now. I have a question for you that is from a previous study group that will be our test question to see if you are really able to get in and answer these. We call this our rewind question. This is the only time that you will see a question repeated on this live stream today. The study group rewind question asks, a corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? And as I give you the answers, keep in mind, of course, that we do not put our answers in the chat room. You instead answer at the URL that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. No answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. The question again asks, a corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? Would it be MAN, WAN, SAN, WLAN, or PAN? Got a few to choose from there. Those are your possible answers. As always, if you would like to answer this, you would go to the URL on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. We will come back to this question in just a moment to see how well you did with answering this question. I want to thank everyone for being here. We do one of these study groups every month, and we're only able to do this with the support that you've been providing us. So thank you so much for everything that you have provided and all of your support throughout the months. And as we're getting here into the new year, it's been a great year. We're going to start this new year, and I feel that there's a little more enthusiasm as we hit January. People are looking to the future. We're setting goals for the next 12 months, and that's pretty exciting. When we're not here on our live streams, you can always watch our live or our on-demand videos at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also are available on daily pop quiz questions for the A+ are available on, we've got X, Instagram, Discord. We've got Facebook. You can go to LinkedIn. Try to put a lot of those in a lot of different places. So there's a lot of places you can go to find the content. If you ever want to find any of these, of course, just go to our main website, professormesser.com, and there's plenty to view that we can see there. I also want to let you know that somewhat time during this first hour, if I'm doing my job properly, you will get a super secret code word and a series of instructions that will allow you to earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU from our live stream today. This continuing education unit is commonly used for renewal purposes. Some third parties can use these CEUs as well. I will give you instructions sometime in this first hour, so keep listening in for those instructions, and you'll learn how you can use those to help renew your certification. If you don't have your certification yet, this probably won't be very important to you, but it's something that a lot of people who are here watching will submit this, and we'll talk more about that in just a bit. The questions I have for you today are for the CompTIA A+ exam, specifically the exam versions of the 220.1201 and the 220.1202. We refer to these as version 15 of the course. That's what CompTIA calls it. These were released in March of 2025, and we expect that these will retire somewhere around September of 2028. So you have plenty of time to study with your existing materials as long as they are clearly marked as a 220-1201 and a 220-1202. Anything marked as that is up to date with the latest exam objectives. Today, we're going to talk about the 220-1201 exam. This is an exam where they give you 90 minutes to take the exam, and you need to score a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. Pretty useful to know how much you need to earn for the Core 1. Notice the scale is the same for the Core 2, but you have to do a little bit better on the Core 2. You have to, of course, be able to go up and learn up to a 700. You need to earn the 700 score to be able to do that. So there might be some very useful things to think about, but the important part is that the score ends up being a 675 to earn that Core 1 exam. Also let you know that when we are done with this study group, when I hit the stop button, we will have the study group content available on YouTube for immediate replay. We also if you wait about a day, you'll notice that there are timestamps that have been included to the YouTube video description. Those don't appear automatically. Those appear thanks to the hard work of my marketing manager, Lori. She's watching this replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through this probably at 2x speed and writing down all of these timestamps so that you can find this information even faster next time you go through this video, or for the people that are watching this video on a replay. So have a look at that. Thank you, Lori, for doing that. And if this is something that you like to use, make sure you give Lori a heart, maybe emoji in the chat. That would be nice. She's watching the chat replay as we're going by as well. That'd be a good way to show her that you appreciate her hard work as well. 24/7 chat is available on our website. It is a Discord server, so you could just go over to Discord and go to professormesser.com/Discord. We have thousands of people there that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, Security Plus, and other certifications. We also have a number of people that are already taken these certifications, super smart folks that are willing to help others with their goal of getting a job or getting a better job in the IT industry. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and if you are in the US or Canada, there are discounted vouchers available for you, right on the Professor Messer website. These are discounted. Well, much of the discount that's there is based on the prices that are available on the CompTIA website. So I'm sure you could go out to the CompTIA website and pay full price, or you can come to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discounted voucher. It's already built into the price there. You don't have to have a coupon code. There's nothing extra you need to load into your browser. You simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get your voucher at a discount, you get something you cannot get anywhere else, and that's my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote with tips and tricks that might help you in the study process leading up to your exam, and tips that you can use during the exam that might get you a few extra points. Something you get for free. We do not sell this separately. The only way you can get your hands on the Exam Hacks ebook is through the purchase of a discounted voucher or purchase of one of our success bundles. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. To go back to the question we asked earlier, and that question is, a corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? Would it be MAN, WAN, SAN, WLAN, or PAN? Those are all unusual abbreviations. It's like we're not even getting the right abbreviation in the list, but we know that it's got to be one of these. What did you choose? Let's find out. I'm going to close the poll and see what you think the answer is. We were a little torn last month when we went through this one. We seem to be torn again because we've really separated out. We did get a majority, 50% of you that say it's WLAN, but notice we got 27% that say it is WAN, and we got another group, 21% that say the answer is MAN, M-A-N. Very few chose PAN, only 3%, and 0%. Nobody chose SAN. I want to say that was the same for last month, wasn't it? That very few people chose SAN on the one last month. I don't have the details of this, but if we were to look at this and we were to pick at least the one that had the majority, that would be the correct one. So 50% of you choosing WLAN was what we were talking about. The key here is that we were looking at a corporate network providing 802.11 connectivity. This should automatically get you thinking about working with a wireless network. And of course, a wireless network is not one that will go over a wide area, so it would not be a wide area network. Wireless networks tend to only be relatively local to what we are working on. So that would not be something we could use. A metropolitan area network, I know that my wireless network at home is not going to work across the city, so a metropolitan area network would not be the correct answer either. We've also got 3% that said a personal area network. This is generally associated with devices that are in your direct personal area. So things like your EarPods, something that might be a wireless speaker, maybe a Bluetooth connected keyboard. This is a personal area network device, is my wireless keyboard. There are no wires on it, but it only works in this room. If I take it outside this room, we're beyond the distance of Bluetooth, it doesn't work anymore. Therefore, we refer to this as a personal area network. And nobody chose a storage area network. That is a high-speed, direct connected wired network designed for storage. It would not have anything to do with 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. The best description of these is the one that 50% of you chose, a WLAN, a wireless local area network, something like this. So if you've got this in your building, that's the type of network it might be. So anytime you're putting up a wireless access point, you are building out your WLAN, your wireless local area network. Well done with that. We did really good on this particular one to be able to work with that. This keyboard is not an 802.11, unfortunately. It is Bluetooth. So are there any keyboards that are 802.11? There must be some, but it's kind of unusual to find an 802.11 connected keyboard. Well, that would be something, wouldn't it? You could really go anywhere and connect to the network. There must be a use case for that somewhere. Not a use case that I would normally use, however. Let's now do some new questions, shall we? We've got our exam Q&A. As many of you know, when we have new questions, the first new question of our study groups are always a performance-based question. Now, the question we just did was a multiple choice question because there was a question that was asked, and then there were multiple answers that you could have chosen. So this is a multiple choice question. But on your exam, the first handful of questions you get will not be multiple choice questions. This is something you really should be aware of, because if you jump into the exam not aware of this, and it does happen sometimes, people will come after the exam and say, I got like 5 or 6 questions at the beginning that were really something. They were very involved, asking some very interesting things, and were not multiple choice. Like, oh, those are the performance-based questions. So you need to be aware that those are there. Performance-based questions are anything but multiple choice. So they could be matching, they could be fill in the blank, they could be drag and drop, they could put you at a command prompt, they could do a lot of different things in a performance-based question, but always keep in mind that the content of the question comes directly from the official exam objectives. So they're not asking you about things you don't know about. You've already studied these topics, you already know these topics. It's just another way to ask the question that will have you do a little bit more thinking and perhaps a little more directed answers that don't give anything away and certainly don't give you a chance to be able to guess at the answer. So I have for you today, it's sort of a matching question that turned into a fill-in-the-blank question. On your exam, it is unlikely that you would get a fill-in-the-blank question. CompTIA has tended not to ask fill-in-the-blank questions on A+. So what did I do? I made you a fill-in-the-blank question. I feel like they're a little bit more difficult. I started this as a drag and drop, and I thought we're going to make this really difficult for you as your first performance-based question of the year. We're jumping right into it. Let's do this month's performance-based question. It is a question that asks, determine which DNS record is the most likely cause of the following problems. And I have 6 problems here. And as I recall, I started this by having a list of the different DNS records and having you drag and drop it. But I thought, let's make it a little bit more challenging. I want you to tell me for numbers 1 through 6, what is the DNS record that is messing this up? So that is what we would go with. So for those of you listening on the podcast side, here are the 6 different scenarios or problems or issues that we need to solve, and we need to understand what DNS record is causing this issue. The first one is a third party is not able to validate the digital signature of received email messages. What DNS record is causing our problem there? The second is we have received an email categorized as spam, but we don't know what to do with it. We should know what to do with it. I know what I think we should do with it, but we need to look at something else to tell us what the disposition of that spam email would be. What DNS record is not providing this information for us? The third one is a company's email server is not recognized as a legitimate email source. What would it be? Well, we need to look into that one as well. Fourth one is a company needs to use one IP address with different names for an FTP, DNS, and email server. What DNS record does that? Our fifth one is inbound email message transfers are sent to the wrong IP address. That doesn't sound like a good day for anyone. I wonder what DNS record we should fix for that particular problem. And lastly, submissions for the upload server are directed to the incorrect IP address. So there you go. Those are the information. Those are the details that I would like you to provide for me. What DNS records are causing this problem? This is sort of there's obviously an entire section on DNS. There's a whole video that goes through all of the records you need to know and describes them and how you would configure them and what they're used for. But there's also this challenge of troubleshooting a problem. There's, of course, that saying in the world of network management that the problem, if it's a problem for the network, it's DNS. The problem, it's a DNS problem. Well, you haven't even heard the problem yet. Oh, that's okay. I know what it is. It's DNS. It's very easy and unfortunately very common to run into problems associated with DNS. Some of them are related to applications not working properly and embedding DNS content. Sometimes it's a configuration issue on the DNS server itself. DNS is such an integral part of our network. It is such an important service that you have to be very, 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 very careful about making changes to DNS. It is not something you can do flippantly. It's not something you can do without knowledge. You really do need to go to the DNS server, and if you're deciding to touch it, you need to really make sure that the changes that you are putting in place are correct. It can be, you could make changes to a DNS server that would create significant problems for you and your organization. So I always tell people, if you have been tasked with changing DNS, make sure you are very, very, very aware of those changes. I believe that's probably one of the reasons CompTIA made sure to add this DNS information into their course. I think it's an important way to consider that. If you'd like to answer this question, you need to go to the URL, Professor, why did I not put it up on the screen? It's going to be over that last thing there, professormesser.com/QA, and you can lock in what some of these might happen to be. See if you know what they are. Now, some of you that have not gotten to this section with DNS probably have no idea what we're talking about. That's okay. We will go through this list and we will make sure that you know the things that we are going to put in here. So don't worry. We're working through the details of this. If you think you know the answers, submit them at any time by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Yeah, DNS has such an overarching impact on the entire network. And it is something that is used by so many different services, even services you might not even be expecting. For example, all of your Windows Active Directory. How does a Windows machine find the Active Directory server? How does it find that? Does it use some secret Microsoft protocol to do that? Well, not anymore. Now, Microsoft uses DNS to be able to provide those. It uses a service record to be able to find those. So a very good example of where DNS pops up in all sorts of places, and even places where you may not really be expecting it. Let's step through each one of these DNS records and see how you did with picking out the right one. Let's start with the very first one, which is a third party is not able to validate the digital signature of a received email message. This is one, there's a few email-related DNS records in this list, and that's because CompTIA recognizes that those are used at every organization to help prevent spam. So this is a good example of one of those three email-related, spam-related DNS records, and it starts with the DKIM record, the domain keys identified mail. That is one where a digital signature is added to outgoing mail. And on the other side, the receiver of that message can then check your public key and verify that the digital signature, which ensures that that email message was not modified as it was sent between point A and point B. Another great benefit of a digital signature. So the DKIM record includes the public key so that other people on the internet can grab your public key, verify that the message they received was properly signed. It does validate the digital signature, and then they can bring it inside and send it on its way because they know that nothing was changed along the way. A very nice feature to have. And if you're configuring or setting up DNS, or you're configuring or setting up email, you are going to run into DKIM records at your organization, no question. So that's an important one to know. Next on our list is we've received an email categorized as spam, but we don't know what to do with it. This is another one of those three DNS records relating to email, really 4 DNS records relating to email. And whenever you receive an email and you look at the details of the email, and there's a lot of checks that people can do in the header of that message and in the body of the message itself, but a company's decided, that looks like spam to us. We're going to categorize it as spam. But now what do we do with it? There is a DNS record that you can refer to the sender of the email, which will tell you what to do with that spam message. That record is the DMARC record. That is the domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance. I had to write it all down right here because we never call it by its name. We always say it's the DMARC record. So I have to make sure I get the words right for all of that. That is a record that you can tell people, if you've received a message from us and it looks spammy, maybe it didn't even come from us, it came from somewhere else, you've identified it as spam, we would like you to, and then you can specify what somebody can do with it. We'd like you to just drop it. Don't deliver it. Don't even save it. Or we can tell you, please put that into your spam folder. Maybe that's another thing you can do with it. We could also say, send it on through. Let whatever other system you have manage that spam that you believe the spam is once it gets to the end user. So you've got some choices here. DMARC is one where you can let someone else decide for you, what do I do with this spam that has been received by me? It's a great way to set that up. And you can just say, drop it. You don't want it? Send it somewhere else. Third on our list is a company's email server is not recognized as a legitimate email source. We got these email records right at the top, didn't we? The one here, this is a nice one because if you've received spam before, it's probably spam that says it came from ProfessorMesser.com, but really it was sent from an email server in another country. So one of the things you'll see in my DNS server, in the ProfessorMesser.com DNS server, is I have listed out all of the legitimate email sources for anything that we send. So if you receive an email and it says it's from me and it's not in that list, that's spam. So that's a nifty thing to have, and that is a record called an SPF record. That is your Sender Policy Framework record. An SPF record is there to provide a list. Usually it's more than one email server. And if you were to look at my DNS server right now and look at my text records that contain that SPF information, that is exactly what would be in there, is a list of those email servers. Next on our list, number 4, a company needs to use one IP address with different names for an FTP, DNS, and email server. It will probably be more accurate in this one to say a company needs to use one FQDN with different names. The idea is the same. It should lead you to the place where we have multiple services all running from a single server. That is a canonical name record or a CNAME record. That's what we would use for that one. CNAME is the one that allows us to have that multiple services all referencing back to a single IP address. Now, why would you want to do that? Why don't you just make 3 different entries in your DNS all with the same IP address? Well, the idea is that maybe it's not just 3 services, maybe there are 20, and maybe you have 100 servers running 20 different services, and suddenly someone comes to you and says, we're changing all the IP addresses. Well, do you want to change 2,000 records in your DNS, or do you want to change 100? That's the real difference. So having a CNAME record can greatly simplify the management of DNS, and something that can save you a lot of time if things change in the future. Next on our list is inbound email message transfers are sent to the wrong IP address. This is probably the most basic of DNS records. That's your address record for your MX. In fact, it's probably in every single DNS you run into is the MX, because when somebody's sending you an email, where do they send it? Where do you even put this? It is a fundamental. This record and the next one we're going to look at are fundamental records in DNS. They're almost in every DNS you would run into, unless perhaps you're not providing any email services. In that case, good for you. Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe I should consider that. No email for me. Inbound email message transfers, the MX record is what determines that. That's where you would change. That's especially one of those records you do not want to change unless somebody has a very good reason for changing that. And lastly, submissions for the upload server are directed to the incorrect IP address. This is the other foundational, in my mind, a foundational record for DNS. It's the address record for A, that's your IPv4, and the address record for IPv6, the quad A records. Those determine IP addresses as well. So those are the DNS records. You need to know all of these. In fact, I think there's probably one more DNS record you need to know. They are all listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you're looking at this right now and wondering, where do I even find all these names and abbreviations and where did these come from? They're all in the exam objectives. We'll talk more about the objectives later on in this study group. But this is a very good place to go. If you're troubleshooting DNS, that may be the best place you go to start troubleshooting and finding where these problems might be. That was your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some ideas of things you can work on to be able to learn more about DNS, learn more about troubleshooting DNS, and things you should be careful about when making changes to your DNS server. Let's now go back and look at a multiple choice question, one that we can make guesses at and figure out what the answers are. The next question on our list is this one that asks, a technician has clicked a button to create a cloud-based server with only an operating system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SAS, SAS, IaaS, REFS, or PaaS? There's a lot happening in this question. So the question asks, a technician has clicked a button to create a cloud-based server with only an operating system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Is that SaaS, SAS, IaaS, REFS, or PaaS? There's a lot of abbreviations in this course, isn't it? Seems to be a lot that we have to go through. And this is one of those that you need to know as well. All of these abbreviations, by the way, are in the CompTIA exam objectives. So even if you're looking through this list and you know what the right answer is, make sure you look through the wrong answers in this particular question so that you know exactly what the answers might be. So it'd be something to really qualify. Oh, I know what that abbreviation is for. I know what that abbreviation is for. I know what that So make sure you know what all these different abbreviations can bring to the table. This is also one of these questions where if you're going through cloud-based studies, this is something you should know. So make sure you go through those and understand all of it as well. In fact, you should probably know all of these pretty solid. They could certainly come up as answers to a different question on your exam. Might be another thing to consider if you're working through the details. In cloud-based, there's obviously an entire section of cloud-based topics in the exam objectives. It's section 4, domain 4, as they say. Make sure you are aware of that as we step through the details. So let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a technician has clicked a button to create a cloud-based server with only an operating system. Which of the following would best describe this cloud model? Would it be SaaS, SAS, IaaS, REFS, or PaaS? Let's see what you chose. We're going to close our poll, have a look at what we've got here, and we're a little torn. We did not get a majority on this one, although 43% of you say it is PaaS. We have 28% that say SaaS and 24% that say IaaS. Only 4% of you say it is SAS, and then only 0%, nobody chose REFS. Very good for you, because it is not even anywhere close. REFS has nothing to do with the cloud, so good for you for not choosing that one as your answers. However, the actual answer is a little bit more of a challenge to be able to break through. If we are looking at cloud-based services, one of the things that you've probably seen about the cloud is there's different ways to deploy cloud-based services. Sometimes you can deploy the cloud-based service with just an operating system. Sometimes you can deploy that cloud-based service with no operating system at all. Maybe it would also be one where you're able to do some programming given the tools they give you on that platform, or maybe you do nothing. Maybe you simply log in and the entire service is available to you. You didn't have to install anything. You don't have to manage the data. There are a lot of different choices here. But in this case, we clicked a button and what we got was a server and an operating system. It means there's no data, there's no applications, there's no middleware, there's nothing. There's just a device that we can now put our own software on if we would like to. We refer to this type of cloud-based model as infrastructure as a service. You might also hear this called hardware as a service. This is when you're effectively renting time on a machine, but it's really your responsibility to put the data and the applications on that machine. So you're the one managing the process. You're not handing that off to someone else. You're managing where the data is stored. You're managing the security of that operating system and the security of the data and the applications. So this is one where your data is in the cloud, but you have a little more control over who gets to see that information. For example, if you've gone to professormesser.com, I have a series of cloud-based servers that are out there. Those cloud-based servers are really just provided by my web hosting provider, and they just give me a machine with an operating system. And then it's up to me to install the web server. If I need a database server, I need to install that. If I need software to be able to present web pages to you, like WordPress, I need to install that. Anything else, if there's a membership software that you use to log in and access your course notes and your practice exams, that software is separate. So all of that management takes place in the back, but my web hosting provider isn't in control of any of that. That is all my responsibility. So I am not only here on this live stream, I'm also my Linux administrator, along with all the other administrations, and I'm able to do that thanks to infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service is the answer that we were looking for, and 24% of you chose that one as the correct answer. We didn't get a majority, but the plurality of you chose the 43% option of PaaS, platform as a service. Platform as a service is kind of a middle ground to this. We'll talk more about that in a moment. We've got also at the high end, the software as a service, which would include data and software and so much more. We also have these other two options that have really nothing to do with the cloud. 4% of you said SAS. This is serial attached storage. That is not that's a storage technology that really has nothing to do with cloud-based technologies. That's the type of storage drive that you're plugging in. And 0% of you said it was the file system REFS, which is a file system commonly seen in high-end Windows systems. So in this case, the answer we were looking for, and the one that 24% of you gave, was infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. I do have a responsibility matrix in my video. This is something you can commonly get from your cloud provider. And most cloud providers are pretty close to this matrix, but you should look at the cloud provider for you. I think the one I took for this one, I probably based this on Azure, but it's pretty much the same that I use on my cloud service provider as well. Meaning that if you want to manage everything, well, you're not in the cloud. That's all you, not only managing the physical data center, you're managing the operating systems, you're managing the applications, all of the data, the user logins, and everything else. That's really something that you handle only. But if you go into the cloud, maybe you use software as a service, where you'll have the software provider, the cloud provider, provide you with an operating system. They might even provide you with some account information, but almost everything is an application level and down. So you don't have to program anything. You just log in and use the app. If you use, for example, Gmail or Yahoo Mail or some other web-based service from a provider, That's software as a service. You didn't program the email system. You don't maintain the data. You don't back up that system. You don't upgrade the software. That's all in software as a service. In the middle of this is platform as a service, where now maybe the cloud provider gives you tools that you could use to build your application. So they're kind of helping you through the process of the application development process, but still there's a lot that happens in the cloud. If you're just getting an operating system, though, in some cases, not even the operating system, you would install the operating system separately, you are infrastructure as a service. So this responsibility matrix might help you understand a little bit better where the different features fall for those different cloud deployment types. And for your exam, this could be an important bit of information to remember, because it will help you answer questions like this one that are asking you about just getting cloud services within an operating system. Well, that fits perfectly into infrastructure as a service. Let's keep this going. We have many more questions to get through. Next question on our list is this one, and it asks, when a user is printing a report, they're not able to see the printer tray that holding the paper that they need. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be that we've got a paper jam? Are we out of toner or ink? Is it an empty printer tray? Is the printer not powered on? Or is it an incorrect printer driver? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer. To know what that happens to be. The important part with this one is really understanding the printing process, and who doesn't want to understand more about the printing process? Am I right? Printing is something that is a little bit of a challenge these days. It's always been a challenge to understand the printing process, but I will tell you, if you spend the time to understand where the printing process starts, where the information is sent, how it is processed, and ultimately how it makes its way to the printer, you've really deciphered the bulk of the problems that you are going to run into. There will certainly be individual printer type problems, and in those cases, it may even be something specific to a particular printer manufacturer or printer type, but those are things that we should always consider as we are going through and understanding the printing process. I will tell you, especially as we are printing less and less and less, it seems, that the more you know about the printing process, the more you will be able to troubleshoot and the faster you will be able to troubleshoot. So these can be pretty good answers. Let's make sure that we understand those as we go through all of this. So let's see how you did. A lot of people have put their answers in very quickly on this one. So let's see how you did. When a user is printing a report, they are not able to see the printer tray holding the paper they need. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a paper jam? Is it out of toner or ink? Is it an empty printer tray? Is the printer not powered on? Or is it an incorrect printer driver? We will close our poll and see how you did. Oh, we got another rainbow. We're just not sure exactly where this happened. Well, let's break it down and let's really figure out where we fit into this world of things. You can see that 44% of you say the answer, it's an empty printer tray, is the reason we're not seeing that during the printing process. 35% of you say the problem is an incorrect printer driver. That's why we're not seeing this printer tray pop up on our screen. 15% of you say there's a paper jam in the printer. That's what the problem happens to be. 6% said the printer is not powered on, and 1% of you say that you are out of toner or ink. So hopefully, if we look at the details of this and try to understand more about the printing process, we may be able to decipher this a little bit better. Let's talk about these printer trays. You may even have a printer like this. This is a pretty big printer, but the printer you even have at home might even have multiple trays in it. I don't have multiple trays in my laser printer that I have at home or in the studio, but I do have a way to use either the printer tray itself or to manually add that in. In this printer, how many trays do we have? We probably have 1, 2, 3, 4 printer trays. These are big trays. They probably hold hundreds of pieces of paper in each one of these because it's a big printer. It's probably one that is used in an environment where they're doing a lot of printing. So we want to put a lot of paper in these. So when you're printing from your laptop, from your desktop, you're choosing now which one of these trays you would like to print from when that job finally appears at the printer. Remember, at this point, you can see that I've got, let's fix this, shall we? You can see on my screen that I have all of these different pieces of the printer added into this. But if you're printing to a printer and you are needing to print to a certain printer tray type, you will be prompted during the printing process to choose which tray you would like to go to. That's a nice feature to have so that you can decide of this. At that point, you've not sent anything to the printer. The printer, the laptop that you're working on, may not even be talking to the printer yet or have any idea if the printer is even turned on because you're just on your laptop, you're on your desktop machine, you're inside of Windows, you're inside of Linux, you're inside of Mac OS. There may not be any input or feedback you're getting from the printer at that point. You haven't even sent the print job yet. You're just setting the parameters on what you are sending to the printer. So for those parameters to match the printer, you have to make sure that you have a correct driver configuration for that specific printer type. If you have the wrong driver configured in your operating system, you might have configured it for the smaller version of this printer, and maybe it only has one paper tray in that smaller version. Well, that's an issue. We need to check the printer driver that we're using so that we can see that there are 4 options available. Now, is the printer turned on? In fact, we'll go through this list. When we do that, we're choosing that paper tray and figuring it out. If the paper tray is empty, do we still even get that option? Well, of course you do, because that might be the tray that always you print from when you want letterhead. Well, just because you're out of paper doesn't mean you can't print to that tray. The printer will, of course, stop and say, we're out of paper. You pull the tray out, you put letterhead in it, you push the tray back in, and it will print that print job. So the message you're seeing on your screen before you even send this to the printer is probably has nothing to do with whether the printer tray has paper in it or not. At this point, you don't know yet. So that would not be the case here either. We've got 15% that said it's a paper jam. Same type of problem. We haven't even sent the printer job to the printer yet. We haven't hit that OK or submit button yet. So we don't know if the printer is turned on. We don't know if it's working properly. We don't know if it has a paper jam. We don't know if it's out of toner. We don't know anything about that printer quite yet. There are some printers in the world that will provide some feedback during that initial printing process. We had nothing in the question about that. And as you are going through your exam, you should never assume things about the question. Everything you need to know to answer this question is contained in the question itself. You are never going to be put into a position where you have to assume anything or you have to make up some type of backstory as to how you got here. Don't spend time doing that. Read the question and answer the question based on the information that is in the question and nothing beyond that. Don't make up things that don't exist. There's no reason for that on the exam. 6% of you said the printer's not powered on. Again, we're just at the beginning of the printing process, and whether the printer is powered on or not, it's not a problem for us yet. We're sending this job to a print queue that's probably on an external print server. So we could send 100 print jobs, even if the printer's not turned on. Once we turn the printer on, all 100 of those print jobs will begin to print. So that's not our problem. Certainly not seeing a printer tray pop up has nothing to do whether the printer is powered on or not. And lastly, out of toner or ink, same problem again, as I mentioned earlier. If you're out of ink, you're out of toner, you're out of the ribbon is low, the ink is low in your ribbon. If you're printing to an impact printer, maybe, you don't know. That scenario is not one that's going to change what printer trays you see. And in fact, you may not even know that that has occurred until you send that to the printer and you show up at the printer and it says no toner. You got to replace it. So that's not the problem we were looking at earlier. The answer that we were hoping to find was the one that 35% of you chose, which was an incorrect printer driver. That's where the list of printer trays will be inside of your system. And if you're not seeing the right listing of printer trays, you're not seeing the right number of printer trays, you're not seeing any printer trays, that's probably a print driver problem. That's where you're going to focus, and that is the one where it would be an issue for you. So make sure you are aware of the printing process. As I mentioned earlier, the more you know about the printing process, the more these types of questions will begin to sort of automatically find the right answer for this. Not automatically, but you now know it automatically. It's already ingrained in you, the printing process. You'll be able to look at this and say, oh, we know it's not a jam or out of toner because we don't know yet. We haven't sent the print job. That's exactly where we would go. The question obviously would, in this case, would be an incorrect printer driver. Eventually you will go to the printer. If it's out of paper, for example, it's an empty printer tray, you will send the print job. And then when you go to the printer, it will say, there's no printer, there's no paper in here. You're going to want to change that. Here's an example of this. This is the tray configuration that you would have in a printer driver. I'm in Microsoft Windows here. I'm looking at the advanced options for this printer, and you can see in the main tray, you can even configure the type of paper that is in that main tray. And you can go through each tray and manually configure all of them if that's something that you would like to do. So all available. There must be some driver issue. If you're not seeing that, maybe you've got the wrong driver. Maybe the driver that you have is misconfigured. In either case, this is always going to be something relating to an issue and relating to the way that your printer works. So make sure you check that driver. That can be pretty important. All of this information that we've seen so far, and as you can tell, there are hundreds and hundreds of topics that are covered. Both of our A+ courses take place over 137 videos. That is a lot of videos to go through. And certainly I encourage you to watch every single one of these videos because we cover every single objective from the official CompTIA exam objectives, but not everybody has that amount of time. So it might be more useful if you were able to go and have all of the content from these videos in one place. We could take all of the text, all of the important tables, all of the important graphics, and put them into one single set of course notes. And that's what we did with the Professor Messer course notes. This is one place you can go to see everything about a video. Here's the PDF version of the course notes. Of course, we make these available in both a PDF version and a physical version. Obviously, the content of both of these is identical, just one is in a digital format and one is in a physical format. If I go through, you can see there's a complete table of contents. We were just looking at printers. So why don't we use this to troubleshoot our printers? Let's go to maybe troubleshooting printers is right down here in section 5.6. I'm going to click that. It takes us to section 5.6, troubleshooting printers, and then you can look at information about where the printer problems might be. For example, there might be one that shows connectivity issues or an incorrect page orientation or finishing issues, or a tray is not recognized. There's your problem right there. And you'll notice the text and the video content is right here in the set of course notes. These course notes are available for both our Core 1 and our Core 2 exam. And if you end up getting the printed version, I print these on demand and mail them out to you anywhere in the world. These course notes also are available. If you get the printed version, you get the digital version for no additional charge. So while you're waiting on this to be mailed to you, you can immediately download the digital version and start reading it. It's a nice way to have everything in one place, maybe help you during the studying process and give you the information you need at a glance. A PDF format is also something you can use on almost any device, and it also helps us keep this entire crazy experiment going. If you'd like to learn more about it, you can find it at professormesser.com/1201 notes. Let's do another question. I think you'll be able to bounce back with this one. I kind of felt bad on that last one. So let's see how we did. Only a little bit, though. Maybe not really at all. The question asks, an employee is connecting to a device using a lightning cable. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Would it be back up an iPad, use an LCD projector, connect an external drive to Mac OS, charge an Android phone, or connect an external speaker? This is a good question, primarily because there are multiple answers here that could be right, but only one of them fits the scenario that we have given. An employee is connecting to a device using a lightning cable. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Would it be to back up an iPad, use an LCD projector, connect an external drive to Mac OS, charge an Android phone, or connect to an external speaker? You think you know the answer? Go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. Maybe you've even worked with these and you know what this answer would be. I will tell you that there are multiple answers in here that could be right, but only one of them fits the question that we are asking. So make sure you are thinking about this. Whenever you will see these questions on your exam, talk about what should be the first thing that you do. What is the most likely use of this? This is one where if you're working through the details of this, you will certainly want to be familiar with where we are using this technology and how we're using this technology. It might help a lot as you're going through this. So have a look at these possible answers. See what you think the answer is. Lock in your answer at any time using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did with this one. We've got a lot that we could choose here, but only one of these is going to be the most likely use of this connection. Let's stop the poll and see how we did. Well, first we go through the question again. It asks, an employee is connecting to a device using a lightning cable. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this connection? Would it be to back up an iPad, use an LCD projector, connect an external hard drive to Mac OS, charge an Android phone, or connect an external speaker? Let's close the poll and see how you did. A lot of people voted on this one. Big numbers. Almost 70% of you say the answer is to back up an iPad. 20% though say, no, this is how we would connect an external hard drive to Mac OS. And then we're down to single digits. 6% said to charge an Android phone. 5% said to use an LCD projector. And 0% said to connect to an external speaker. So which one of it is it? Well, if we go with the majority in this case, you would be in the right group. Backing up an iPad would be the most likely use of this connection, but not the only use of this connection. First, let's talk about the lightning cable. What in the world is this cable? This is a proprietary cable created by Apple in the world where USB-C did not exist. We had not created USB-C yet. It was not ratified. It was not shipping. There were no USB-C interfaces. And Apple realized long ago, years ago, that this technology is one where we need to have a better connector type than the, at the time, micro USB, which admittedly had a number of faults. This got past a number of those faults. We were able to send much more data over this connection, and it was one of those where you can simply plug it in either orientation and it would work perfectly. Can't do that with micro USB. One of the great things about USB-C, I think, is being able to simply plug it in and knowing you're plugging it in an orientation that would work. Lightning cables are very commonly used on things that would be related to Apple components, especially their mobile devices. Lightning was exclusive to mobile technologies with Apple, so you would commonly see a Lightning connection on an iPhone, on an iPad, or on technologies that were associated with an iPhone or an iPad. So these would be extremely useful for those mobile technologies, but that's about where Lightning's use ended. We didn't see Lightning used very much on laptops, if at all. We didn't see Lightning used on servers or workstations. We didn't see Lightning used anywhere outside of the Apple ecosystem. So Lightning is a technology that thankfully has sort of died off. Now that USB-C is here and it's got a lot of adoption, now pretty much everyone is moving to USB-C, including Apple, and that's exactly what they said it would be done, but you will still find devices out there with Lightning technologies. So for those of you wondering, oh, we don't have to know anything about Lightning, nobody's making Lightning-related products anymore, that's not technically true. We still have new products that are shipping with Lightning. I think they're getting rid of almost all of them at this point. I think there's one or two that still have Lightning on it, and you will certainly find a lot of Lightning connected devices out there in the world. So this absolutely is the technology you need to know because you will run into this. I still have a couple devices here that are Lightning connected devices. So it's another one of those where pretty important to keep that in mind. Lightning itself is the answer that we were looking for backing up an iPad. This is where people would plug in their iPhone or their iPad device and be able to transfer data off of that device, back up information. It's also a good way to grab the logs off of an iPad. Well, you didn't know there were logs there? There are. You need a Mac OS to be able to plug into that device and see those. I think you could do it probably now on a mobile device too. But there are some great logs on your iPads and your iPhones that you can only see if you connect to those devices over a cable. And if that device has a Lightning port, you're going to need a Lightning cable. We also have other places where you could have used a Lightning cable. Using an LCD projector, there are video-based Lightning connections that you can get on these devices. So that technically would be an answer, but it's such an unusual use of the Lightning connection that it would not be the most likely given all of these other options. I think plugging in and backing up an iPad and transferring data is a much more common and much probably the most likely use of all of the things that you could use with a Lightning cable connection. I guess technically the thing we would use it for would be charging. But the next best thing then would be to back up that iPad. 20% of you, though, that's a pretty big number, said that you would connect an external drive to macOS. As I mentioned earlier, we didn't really see the Lightning technologies extend beyond the mobile environment. And if you're using macOS, you're not on an iPad, you're not on an iPhone. An iPhone uses iOS, an iPad uses iPad OS, and then the desktop systems use macOS. So macOS being on a desktop means that there's not going to be any Lightning connections at all. You're probably thinking about Thunderbolt. Those names are so close, aren't they? Lightning and Thunderbolt. But they are two very, very, very different technologies. Lightning is being phased out. Thunderbolt is a much newer and much more updated technology, and one that we use quite a bit. In fact, Lightning is one that has a proprietary type of connection. We saw it here. A Thunderbolt is using, these days, USB-C as the standard connector. So, and they're very different in what they do. They're not really related to each other. Lightning is proprietary to Apple. Thunderbolt is a technology that was primarily promoted by Apple and Intel. I think there's someone else in there too that did that. But they are not related in there. They just sound like they should be. I think it's one of those scenarios like Java and JavaScript sound like they should be related. They are not related at all. So this is another one of those scenarios. Lightning and Thunderbolt sound like they're related. They are not related at all, other than being a connector you would plug in or a cable that you would use to connect a device together. 6% said charge an Android phone because Lightning is Apple proprietary. You're not going to see that on an Android phone. Oh, no. Not going to do that. And connecting to an external speaker is commonly done with Bluetooth or some other wireless connection. You would probably not use a Lightning cable for that. Could you? You probably could. Is that the most likely given these other options? It is not. Backing up an iPad is the most likely, and that is the one that almost 70% of you chose. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is to follow these instructions. You must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the link that says Contact Us. That's going to bring up a form. In that form, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put January 2026, A+, Core 1. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, back up an iPad. Back up an iPad is not the name of a song. That is the super secret code word of the month. That's what we would like to do, is back up an iPad with our Lightning cable. And you can, of course, put other information into that message if you would like. I do read through every single one of these, but you don't have to. You just hit the send button, hit the submit button, and it will send that message to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I will get these back to you hopefully very soon so that you will be able to do that. That's what we're trying to make happen as you are going through the details of earning your CEUs. Again, the way you would get this CEU is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put January 2026 Core 1 or A+, or something like that, so I know where this came from. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, back up an iPad. That's what we want to do. So hopefully that will give you something to consider and to work on as we are going through and trying to understand what the right options might be for us. But if you need a CEU, I can send you a CEU. You obviously can't watch my videos exclusively to get enough CEUs to renew, but you have to do other tasks as well. All of that is on the CompTIA website. If you're interested in learning more about what you need to do to renew your certification, there is a link in the YouTube video description of this video on how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And I detail, at least at a very high level, all of the different methods you could use to renew your cert. You might not want to collect CEUs. You might want to do something else. There are many options available to you. I detail those in that video. Well, I know we're sort of at the top of the hour here, but I would like to give you another question. We have one more that we could go through. This next question, however, will not be in this same format that we've been doing so far. It will be a question that I guess you might have seen this question before, because the next question that we're going to do comes from my practice exams book. Whenever I started looking at the practice exams available on the internet, I was appalled. I was surprised. I was taken aback. I was not happy with what I was seeing. A lot of the questions on the internet are either questions that have nothing to do with the exam objectives, asking you about topics that you will never have on the exam. That doesn't help you. Or they're questions written in a form that really does not prepare you for the same style or the same tone as the CompTIA exam. And I thought, what we need are better questions. We need questions that are designed to prepare you not just for the content that you need to know, but prepare you for the style and the tone of the exam itself. To my knowledge, there's no one else out there that is providing that level of detail with their practice exams. And of course, the practice exams are available in printed format. This is a pretty big book. It's a big one, 387 pages. I've got 3 90-question practice exams in this book, and there are both multiple choice and performance-based questions in this. So I have for you a question from my practice exams book. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We are, of course, going to work through this as if we were doing a question in our professormesser.com/QA link, but this will not be in that link. The question I have for you is from question A33 in my book. This is on page 12 of my book. And the question asks, a user is just connected to a new wireless network, but they cannot view any internet websites. Their network configuration shows the IP address as 169.254.228.109. The subnet mask is 255.255.0.0, and they have not been assigned a default gateway. Which of these is the most likely cause of this issue? Is it that the subnet mask is not correct, the internet provider is experiencing a temporary outage, the DHCP server is down, or the wireless adapter is not working properly? Now, one of the things that we can do here, because this is a PDF, is I could annotate this. Let's annotate maybe with some blue. Maybe we're looking at some of these numbers and we think that's an important number to know. This is an important number to know. Maybe knowing that there's a default gateway are important things to know. So you can annotate this on the screen. It's completely available to do this. If I had a stylus, I could even write on the screen itself and make notes that way. Then, of course, you could choose whether it's A, B, C, or D. If you just wanted to know if it's the letter that you chose, I do have a page that has what we call our quick answers, which is just a bunch of all of the numbers with the letters associated with those. There's no context. There's no additional information. What I want to show you is the details, which are on page 68. They break this down into its ultimate view, but it's on page 68. And as you already saw, we're on page 12. This is a PDF. Those of you that have worked with PDFs before know that you're working through a lot of different pieces to be able to get to that point. Let's bring that up again. There we go. This is one, though, that I've added links to this right now. So if we go to this link, the details, and click 68, it moves us to page 68. Oh, if I took it out of annotation mode. Sorry, we're not annotating anymore. We can go there. And there we go. Here's the question again. And it tells you that the answer is C, the DHCP server is down, and it gives you an explanation of why that is the right answer, which is great. And if you got it right, this really validates why you got it right, I guess. But in a scenario like this, where you're trying to study for an exam and you get a question wrong, it's more helpful to know why you got the question wrong. This helps complete kind of that circle of knowledge where you got it wrong. I need to understand why I got it wrong so that the next time I get this particular question correct. So in my book, every single incorrect answer is documented as to why it is incorrect. I think this is probably more important than telling you why the right answer is right. I think it's more important to tell you why the wrong answers are wrong. So I tell you why the subnet mask is not correct. I tell you why the internet provider experiencing a temporary outage is not correct. And I tell you why the wireless adapter not working properly is not the right answer either. Now, if you didn't understand any of this question, you didn't understand what these numbers were, what these topics were, I also include a link to the video that was used to create this question itself, so that you can go watch the video, learn more about why I'm asking this question. And I bet if you came back to this question, you would just get it right away. You'd be able to answer this immediately and get the right answer. But it's another way to provide you with additional details that you could use to learn even more, even after you've answered the question. So here our answer was A, the subnet mask is not correct, and it's because of API-PA, which we should have recognized because our IP address started with 169.254. Now, once we're done with this, of course, I want to go to the next question, but we're already down here on page 68. That doesn't help me very much. But of course, most PDF readers have a back button, just like your browser has a back button. Mine's up here in the upper right or upper left here, and I can go to that by clicking back, click, and now we're back to where we started. And I can go to the next question that's on our list, question A34. That's my practice exams book. As I mentioned, I have 3 separate practice exams in each one of these. So if you get the 220-1201 practice exams book, you're getting 3 separate 90-question practice exams in the same book. Now, we also have a 1202 practice exams book that has another 3 sets of completely separate and brand new questions, 3 separate practice exams. So if you're studying for both your Core 1 and your Core 2, you might want to look at getting both of those at the same time. There's a little bit of a price break if you get them as a combo, just something to consider. And of course, as always, if you get the physical edition that I'm showing here, you of course get the digital edition for no additional charge. Those are my practice exams, and maybe that's something that can help you as well. If you're going through and trying to understand the answers that we have and the questions that you might run into on the exam itself, give you the same feel of questions you might get on the exam itself. This is, as I mentioned throughout this study group today, every question we went through pulled from topics that were well documented in the official CompTIA exam objectives. These objectives are incredibly valuable. They will tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam, at least the topics you need to know to pass this exam. They are a great checklist. This should be the first thing you read through before you start your studies. If you've already started your studies, you might want to take a break and step through these real quick just to understand them. They're also a great place to go before you take your exam. There were a couple of questions that came up earlier in the chat where people are asking, how do I know if I'm ready? Or how do I really test myself to really know? I think I'm ready to take the exam, but am I really ready to take the exam? What I would recommend you do is download the objectives. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives to find those. And the objectives themselves, I'm going to go to the first page of objectives here. For the 220-1201, the first section is 1.0. That's the domain 1 is mobile devices. And in section 1.1, given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques. And they specifically give you bullets here. Here's the detail of this. Here's the value of this document. Battery, keyboard keys, random access memory, hard disk drive, solid state drive. And those would be the HDD or SSD, wireless cards, physical privacy and security components like biometrics, near-field scanner features, Wi-Fi antenna, connector/placement, camera/webcam, and microphone. So in that first section, those are all the topics you need to be very familiar with before you go to take your exam. So if you can explain that topic as it applies in this particular section and explain it to yourself or explain it to someone else, and you've got a pretty good understanding of that technology, you can check that one off your list. But you might think that maybe I don't know enough about the battery piece. Well, maybe this is an annotation. We know a little bit, but we don't know everything. So let's tag that one. We're going to come back to battery. But keyboard and keys, I'm very familiar with keyboard and keys. So I think I've got that one down. We can check that one off our list. That one's fine. Random access memory, I'm pretty good on that one. Hard disk drive and solid state drive. Oh, I don't think I even touched those the first time through. So maybe I know nothing about them. Maybe I should really go through and spend my time. So when I'm done going through the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics in this document, I should have some red marks in here that I can go back to and start my studies with the red section, because those are the ones I know the most little about. Is that good grammar? No, it is not. But that's the scenario we're in. We're trying to find the things we know the least about. And that's where this comes in. You can do your own setting. And then once you go through hard disk drive, solid state drive, and you think, okay, I got it now. Now I understand that piece of it. We can now make that one green, and we can go to the next one on our list. So there you go. That gives you some feel for things you can do to help make the process go a little bit smoother for you. Maybe that's something that can help you with your exam studies as well. Certainly a great thing to reference prior to booking your exam. We do one of these study groups for A+. We do at least 2 A+ live streams a month, one for Core 1 and one for Core 2. This was obviously our Core 1 study group for January. But of course, we've got another study group for January. It's going to be on, it's not on January 8th anymore. I did not update that screen. So ignore that. It's on January 9th now. You see how dynamic these are? That's why I often tell you, if you're going to look at when our next live streams are going to be, always go to the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. That's the URL that's on your screen. That calendar will tell you the most updated times and dates that we have for our live streams. And if I make a change, that's where I change it first. So you will always be up to date with the most recent information at the link you see on your screen, professormesser.com/calendar. I also update the events calendar in our Discord. They're not linked, but they do have the same information. I update them simultaneously, so you will always know when the next events are going to be. I also have A+ study groups scheduled already for February the 3rd and February the 5th. Those dates could change. So if they do, you will always see updates at the link on your screen, professormesser.com/calendar. Well, the part where I ask you questions, we've gone through an hour of that, and you did amazingly on the questions that we provided. But we're not done yet. Now is your opportunity to ask me questions. And you can do that from the same link that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You could look at the top of the screen, hit the tab, and submit a question at any time that I will look at in our after show, which comes up immediately after this. You just stay where you are, and we will transition right into that. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers, and you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook at professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes, our practice exams, our success bundles, and so much more. You can find it at professormesser.com/1201success. And of course, we are on social media, because you're on social media. You can find us on Discord or X or YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook. Simply go to professormesser.com/ the name of one of those sites, /Discord, /X, /YouTube. You get the idea. A great place to find us if you're online. That'd be a great place to run into us, answer your daily pop quiz questions, or ask anything you'd like about the A+ exam itself. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stick around for our after show coming up in just a moment. You don't have to click anything. We will come right back to that. Thank you so much for joining in this first hour. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, I'm going to take a quick sip. Ooh, needed that. Okay. Let's do an after show, everybody. I'm going to get rid of the individuals of me that are here. We're going to get rid of that graphic. There we go. Now we're making it work. You guys did great on the questions that we had earlier. I have been trying to make them slightly more difficult. So we're getting somewhere there that you can, of course, get a little bit more of a challenge. I think we did pretty good with our challenge today. I think it worked pretty good. So now let's do a little bit different of a challenge, because now you're going to ask me questions. Now it's a little more difficult. So let me bring up on my side, I am collecting this list of all of these questions that you are submitting to me. I can bring those up on my screen. We're going to hide this. So in fact, I have. Let me bring this up so I can see it on my side. We've got a lot here to go through. The questions that we have on the screen, in fact, we can see it right here. If I put myself there we go. You can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be monitoring the questions as we go. So you're not going to see them pop up on the screen immediately, but they are being logged behind the scenes. Do not worry. I am absolutely going through them and sorting them out. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to sort those. And a lot of questions are already waiting for us. So thank you for submitting those and having those available already. We will certainly step through each one of those. A lot of people are asking questions that we sort of answered during the live stream itself. So I'll skip over a number of those, but we will certainly get an idea of this. So let's take one of these. You know, we talked in this study group that the 1201 version, the current version of the A+ exam, is one that has been available since March. And the older series, the 1100, the 1101 and 1102, those exams retired in September. So it's been months since you've even been able to take those exams. The international versions of those exams retired in December. So now officially, the 1100 series is long gone. You can't take those exams anywhere, in any language, anywhere in the world. We have officially retired every single bit of those. So Nathan asks, well, do the 1101 and 1102 study group practice questions transfer well to the 1200 series? I think the quick answer to this is, if we take the definition of well, I don't think it transfers well, but some of it does transfer over. But how much? This is kind of the challenge that we have in figuring out some of these. So I'm going to take you to something that will tell you exactly how much those have changed between all of those. We can break those down, get a feeling for them. So if you come to the Professor Messer website, you can go to my free video listing. And in the free video page, as we sort this, right at the top, it even says, what's new in the 220-1201 exam? Well, this is not just a broad overview of what's new. This is a detailed analysis of what's new. Let's click on that so we can see what's new in this exam. This shows us, of course, why these exams change, and you can decide which one would be the one you would take. But I break down for you a Gantt chart so you can see exactly when the old version was available. The 220, 1101, and 1102 retired on September 25th. Notice that the 1201 and 1202 were released in March 25th of 2025. So there was this overlap period where you could have taken either one of these exams. But now the time is over. Once we got to September 25th, the only thing available is the 1201 and 1202. And as you can see, those exam versions will be available and will be up to date through September 25th of 2028. A lot of time on our list to step through all of those. So what has changed? That was really the first question we got. I have for you a nice view of the differences. There were not a ton of differences between these two. A lot fewer changes in this series of exams than in previous updates to the A+ exam. Well, why is that, you think? Well, I'll tell you why, because I did a complete analysis of this. I think the biggest reason that the total number of objectives for the 1201 is 391, the total number of objectives for the 1101 was 396, the size of the course is effectively the same. Size of the exam and the things you need to know is effectively the same. The number of objectives that were only found on the 1101, 58 of those. The number of objectives that are new are 49. So 15% of the old objectives don't show up on the new version of the exam, and 13% of the objectives are brand new that aren't in the 1101 exam. So maybe a 30% difference between the two. That's probably about right. And you can see that the yellow are the things that have been dropped, the blue are the things that have been added, and everything that's the same, a big old link in the middle. 87% of the exam, pretty much the same between both of these. So that's a really good example of why I say a lot of this does carry over, but there's a good chunk that doesn't. So the last thing you want to do is study information that you'll never see on the latest exam. You also don't want to study from older materials because there's a lot of material and information you simply won't get from the older materials. And 30% difference, that's not a passing score. If you don't have that 30%, you're not going to do very well on the exam, I wouldn't think. So that's why I tell people you should have a look at this just so you know. So what really is the difference? I went through every single exam objective on the 1101 and 1102, and I put down everything that was dropped from the 1201, broken down by domain and subdomain. So if you go to section 1.4, you know that they dropped GSM and CDMA, they dropped PRL updates, they dropped two-factor authentication, they dropped account setup, they dropped mail and photo synchronization. Here's another one that was interesting. They dropped in section 5.1 the entire troubleshooting process. I did a whole map of that. You had a flow chart that said how you troubleshoot. They just dropped it, so you don't have to memorize that anymore. They did have a bigger emphasis in dropping things, especially things that were rote memorization. Okay, so what's new? Let's find out what's new. And I listed in here all of the things that are new in this exam, and you can find them broken out by those topics as well. So if you're interested in really getting the deep dive, I've got the deep dive for you so that you can really get a better feel for this. It's something that can really help you with your exam as well. Maybe this is also something that as you go through your studies, maybe this will help you a lot with breaking down and understanding what is new in this exam, what's old in this exam, and where you should focus your efforts, because that will be an important part of this. Let's go back to other questions that you have for me. Hopefully that's answered your question about what transfers well between one version of this exam and another. Might be something that can help you as well. Let's keep going through the list of things that you have sent to me. Thank you for submitting those. If you would like to submit a question at any time, you can do so using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. So let's go through this link, see what questions you have submitted. The questions, by the way, that you're submitting, they can be really about anything. They can be about A+, they could be about industry certifications, they can be about IT in general, or they can be about any other topic. If you want to talk about the weather, I guess we could talk about the weather. I don't know if I'd really choose those. Maybe not the best question to ask, but certainly you could ask anything you would like. And we'll have it in this list, and we'll be able to break those down and see what's there and available. Okay, let's keep going through this list. Oh, let's have a follow-up to one of the questions we did in the first hour. We were talking a lot about working with lightning, the lightning cables that we have. This is from my good friend, You Tell Me. No, that's the name, You Tell Me. No, you tell. What's the purpose of connecting iPad or iPhone via lightning cable if you can connect them to iCloud and keep backed up at all times? First, this is really your best practice for mobile devices. If you are not connected to a cloud-based backup service, maybe you think, I'm not going to spend the $2 a month on storage to back up everything in the cloud. That's $2. You're really doing yourself a disservice. Having everything backed up in the cloud is remarkably not just convenient, but a remarkable backup system, a backup and recovery system. Because these mobile devices, we can lose them at any time. I've certainly lost my phone before. It was there a second ago. I used to keep it clipped to my belt. And that one day I looked down and it wasn't there anymore. Like, what happened? Well, that was the worst thing I could do. And I no longer use a belt clip. It goes in my pocket now. I know where it is now because I did not like losing it. So if you have a phone and you lose it, what happens to all that data? Well, if it's backed up in the cloud, you just buy a new phone and say, put everything back on here. It downloads everything in a minute to 5 minutes to an hour later, however long it takes to get that data transferred back down. Now your system is exactly back to where you left it when you lost it. So that's another great use of that. It is a good investment. You should always have a backup. Always have. If you've watched my course, you know you should always have a backup. How are you not backing this up? And a cloud backup is just so convenient. However, there are things you can do with a directly connected device that are important. You may be working in an environment where you are not allowed to back up things to the cloud. I'm looking at you, Department of Defense. You know, these high-end, highly secure, top secret type systems are not connected to the internet and certainly not connected to iCloud. Even though it's encrypted, even though it's encrypted with technologies that make it very secure if it's in the cloud, not putting it out there means nobody can get their hands on it. So there may be situations where you're not able to use the cloud to back this up. You will also find that there are other capabilities that you can use by directly connecting to a device. I mentioned earlier, if you directly connect your iPhone or you directly connect your iPad over Lightning, and you bring up, if you have Mac OS, you would bring up the Mac OS development system. So you would have a copy, you probably even have a copy of Xcode on your system that you would use for this. That's what I use on mine. That Xcode is designed to give you not just a way to put applications and develop applications for these mobile devices, but that is the one that you would use. I was going to bring mine up and I realized it's not even up to date. That Xcode is the one that gives you the access to the logs. There are other ways to get to the logs as well, using other iPhone functions and iPad capabilities, but that's one of the easiest ways. You just plug in, now you can see all the logs on that system. Another great way to do it. So just because you can connect wirelessly doesn't necessarily mean your wired connections are now of no use to you. They can be very useful in things that you can do with them. Let's keep going through the list of questions that you have sent to me. See what other things are here. This is an unusual question, but we're going to take it anyway just because it's unusual. This is also from a good friend of mine known as Anonymous. Anonymous says, what is the most common way people study wrong for the CompTIA exams, and what's your recommended fix? I don't know that anyone studies wrong that's not entirely true. I will talk about the way some people study wrong, but functionally, I think most of us know the process of doing the studying of this content. I think many of us we've been to classes, we've studied in courses before. This is a little bit different because the scope is pretty broad. It's almost like taking an entire semester of a course and shrinking all of that information down into one single exam. It certainly has that scope to it. It has that feel of the scope that makes it kind of big. So one of the things that I find that people study wrong for these exams is they study from materials that do not follow the official CompTIA exam objectives. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, in fact, let's bring up a copy of those exam objectives again. One of the things I didn't mention earlier is we have this bullet by bullet by bullet list of everything we need to know for this exam. Just bullet by bullet breakdowns of all of this content. One of the things that CompTIA sticks to on this exam is these bullets. They don't tend to go outside the scope of these bullets at all. You will find that 100% of the exam pretty much comes from these bullets. Sometimes, occasionally, they will ask questions that are not in this list, and they are intentionally asking you about content that is not in this list to be able to get feedback on how you would have answered that if you didn't study that content. Somehow that's important to them. I don't know how that's important. It's more annoying, I think, than anything, but that's what they do during their exams. Everything you will be graded on, though, practically 100% of it comes from these exam objectives. This means if you study every single one of these topics and you know this content back and forth, and you can explain any one of these technologies to anybody, you're going to crush the exam. You will absolutely pass your exam, no problem. That's how close they stay to this list. I've seen other third-party websites even tell me that, no, they can ask anything, and they can present you with any topic, so we're going to present you with any topic. I'm not sure how that logic works. They will always reference back to a piece of information that's at the very beginning of this exam objective that says, right here at the bottom, please note, the lists of examples provided in bulleted form are not exhaustive lists. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document. Yeah, that's a nice lawyer talk to say, this is a list, but we could ask you something outside the scope of this list, so you can't be mad at us if we do that. In practical use, however, no, they don't go outside the scope of this list. Why would they? They've told you everything down to the nth degree of what you need to know. Why would they go outside the scope of this list? They don't. So a lot of these other websites I've gone to that are asking you questions about technologies that are no longer covered on the exam are wasting your time and certainly wasting an opportunity for you to have been learning something that would apply to this exam. I guess in some ways I've seen people argue that, yeah, but they're giving you a broader perspective of the world, and eventually you're going to need to know these topics, and it's important to be well-rounded. Well, all those things are true. But in this point, we're trying to pass the certification exam. Wouldn't it be good if we studied the topics that would be presented to us on the exam rather than studying topics that we will never see on the exam? There's plenty of time after your exam is done to become more well-rounded, to learn more about these technologies, and you will learn more about those technologies after you finish your exam. But we have a single goal here, and that's to get you this certification so that you can get a job or get a better job. That is a lot different than building out a well-rounded IT person, which will absolutely and eventually come. But it's something that we first have to get through the certs to make that happen. So I think that's my biggest challenge. I see people studying the wrong materials, studying older content. They've got a book that's the 220-901 and 902, and they're wondering, where's all the topics about Windows XP that I'm supposed to be studying? Why am I not getting a lot of Vista questions? Well, that would be why. You've got such old books and old study materials that you're not learning the information you need for the latest version of the exam. And in the latest exam versions, they got rid of a lot of the rote memorization. Granted, there's still quite a bit of rote memorization in there. They got rid of a lot. They got rid of the troubleshooting list. They got rid of a couple of other things in there that you will see are very odd. For example, the listing of detailed wireless standards, knowing the speeds and frequencies for 802.11a and 802.11b. There's no reason you would need to memorize that. You're never going to find an 802.11a network or an 802.11b network. I doubt you would find one still running in the world anywhere. If you do, please email me. I would love to know the circumstance where you ran into that. Somebody's got one sitting in the back of some data center somewhere that's been just sitting there for 12, 15 years, just simply going, and nobody's unplugged it yet. Certainly you probably will run into those, but you don't need to know anything about the frequencies in use or anything else about that. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Make sure you stick to the objectives. That's probably the biggest fault that I find are people going outside the scope of the exam and then somehow trying to justify to themselves that learning that extra material was somehow important. For the purposes of the exam, it is not. So stick to the objectives and you'll be fine. In fact, you'll crush the exam if you stick to the objectives. That is where you should focus your efforts. Let's keep going through the questions that you have. We got a lot of questions in here to break some of these things down. I think I've given a lot of the questions that have come in about what advice would you give me to take this exam? What things should I know before I walk into the room? Hopefully you've gotten a scope of that by sort of breaking out the exam. Hold on a moment. Let me put this little graphic up real quick. Hopefully you've gotten a perspective of that as you have stepped through the exam itself, the exam objectives. You've sort of gotten an understanding now of why I tell you that is such a good study option. And I think that's the best things you can do is to study on that. Let's keep going through this list of questions that you have. Okay, let's look at a question here from Eric who says, hi, thanks for your time. Will the study sessions in February be 1202 based questions, or do you pull from a combined pool of objectives? Also, I used your material to pass the Security Plus, and I didn't barely pass. I passed by a lot. That's what I'm saying. Stick to the objectives. Congratulations, Eric, on your Security Plus exam and your certification. That sounds like a win all the way around. And quite honestly, thank you for sending that in. I love to hear the success stories. It's a success, and the reason you passed by a lot is you made the effort. You put the time in. You're the one who studied this content. You're the one who had to take the exam. Congratulations on a well-earned Security Plus certification. We do 2 A+ live streams a month. One of them is exclusive to the 220-1201. The other is exclusive to the 220-1202. So our 1202 live stream we have one for January. It's actually Friday of this week. So on the 9th, we're having our 1202 live stream where we do exactly what we just did in this live stream, but we do it just for the 1202 exam. So all the questions you get on Friday will be 1202 questions. We, of course, do another one for 1202 in February. We do one every month. And, of course, you can go back and look at our archive of all of our 1202 study groups as well, or any of our study groups. They are all there. So you can absolutely step through all of them. I don't go to a combined pool for the study groups. That's just too much content. And I think a lot of people are, and the way I recommend when you study for these exams, you go to one exam first, you study for that single exam, you take that exam, you pass that exam, then you shift gears over to the other A+ exam. So you can take them in any order. Some people like to take the 1202 first. Maybe they're more familiar with operating systems or Microsoft Windows. Maybe they stick to the 1201 first, 1202 first, and then they take the 1201 next. Some people just do it in the order that it's already in. 1201 first, then the 1202. Doesn't matter as long as you pass both exams. The exams themselves are very focused then. And when you're studying for exam, you should be very focused. Very few people study and take both exams at the same time. I don't recommend doing that. That's just too much information to try to do in one single exam sitting or one day of taking exams. And it's unnecessary because there's very little overlap between those two exams. I highly recommend you focus on taking and studying for one exam at a time. And so you will not see a combined pool of questions like that from me because I think it's more important that we study just the exam that you're working on at that particular time for our live streams. So that's why I like to do two of those in a single month. We do the Core 1 exam that we're doing today, and we do a Core 2 exam. In this case, it will be on Friday. You're welcome to come back Friday at 12 noon Eastern. I've got all new questions for you. Technically haven't written them yet. I will have all new questions for you on Friday. We can step through all of those. So we got a little bit. And of course, our Network Plus live streams, our Security Plus live streams are also included in that. Make sure you have a look at our calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can, of course, find out when all of those events will be. Our Network Plus study group is next Wednesday. Our Security Plus study group is a Wednesday after that. Just to give you an overview, I think it's the 14th and the 21st, if I recall properly. You can correct me, because I'm probably not right. Or look at the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar. Let's keep going through our list of things. There's so many good questions in here. So many questions. I think a lot of these questions are leading. I think you're provoking me. You want me to go on a rant. I'm not answering those. It's too early in 2026. We're in such a good mood that we're not going to focus on some of the more negative aspects of things or get me into a mode where I'm saying weird things about technologies again. You got to talk me down. We're not going to talk about those. There's too many good things to talk about as far as this is considered. Let's talk about versions of exams. We just talked about this, that we talked about taking certain exam versions, what exams were retired and what exams are current. Isaiah says, I got my A+ certification using the A+ transition to the 1200 series during that transition. So there was a time frame starting in March where you could have taken the 1201, 1202, which had just been released, or you could take the 1101 and 1102 up until September. So it was an interesting overlap period. They tend to do this 6-month overlap period when they are transitioning from one version of exam to another so that you don't study months and months and months for an exam and then suddenly one day the exam's gone, it's missing. So instead of pulling out the rug from underneath you, they give you 6 months to transition in and take the current exam that you've been studying for. Now, you said Isaiah says, I got my A+ certification during that transition. Sounds like he took the 1101 and 1102 exams, turned his A+ certification. At that point, once you are certified, the version of the exam that you took to earn your certification is irrelevant. Doesn't matter. For example, what if you took your A+ certification exams 10 years ago? You took the 220, 1000, and 1001, whatever it was 10 years ago, maybe the 901 and the 902. You took an older version. And then every 3 years, you've updated, you have renewed your certification every 3 years. So today, you are still A+ certified because you did that renewal over the last 10 years. But you took the 900 series exams. Doesn't matter. You renewed. And ultimately, it doesn't matter which version of the exam you took either. You are A+ certified. The only thing employers want to know is, are you up to date? Do you have a current version of your A+ certification? We don't care if you took the exam yesterday or if you took the exam 10 years ago. We want to be sure that you are updated and have a current cert. So I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what exam version you took. The second you become A+ certified, that's it. CompTIA could change the exam version every day. I'm glad they don't. They change it every 3 years. But what if tomorrow they came out with a 1301? And a day after that, they came out with a 1401. And the day after that, they came out with a 1501. The day after that, they came out with a 1601. I would be very busy. I'd be crying a lot. But there would be no difference for anyone who had their A+ certification already. Doesn't matter how they change the questions. Once you are certified, you are certified. They could change the questions every day. It wouldn't matter to you. So yes, the A+ certification that you have earned, regardless of the exams you took to get there, are current. They're valid. It doesn't matter what happens with the exams that come out later on, once you have already earned that certification. The only time when that could be a problem, when it is a bit of an issue, the version of the exam you took, is if you are an instructor. Because many organizations would like the instructor to have already taken and passed that version of the exam if they are instructing others in that exam version. So that's a corner case, certainly. But I usually, after I talk about it doesn't matter which version you take, I usually get an email from an instructor saying, matters to me. Fair point. And it absolutely, that is the case. So if you're planning to teach a class, that probably does matter. If you are not an instructor, which is the vast majority of you, then that's not a problem. You are simply A+ certified. It doesn't matter which exam you took to get there. More questions. Let's keep going through your list. We've got quite a few in here. Let's talk about, what cert do you get? One of the things that I often run into are people asking me, hey, what certification should I get? I don't know. What do you want to do when you grow up? That's the question. What do I want to do when I grow up? I don't know yet. I'm figuring it out as we go. The question is one that I can't answer. I cannot answer for you what certification exam would be the best for your personal career growth. Because you probably have an idea what you would like to do in the future. There are probably certain technologies that you really enjoy. Maybe you're a Windows person, you really get into Windows and you really go into details about Windows. Or maybe you really like Linux and you spend all your time building Linux systems and you're really into using Linux. Well, those are two very different technologies. They're operating systems, certainly, but if you're trying to become an expert, you're trying to have an expertise in a niche of technology, and that's one of the best things you can do for your careers, to find those niches and become experts in those niches. That would be one where you would probably choose a certification that would be a Linux certification if you like Linux, or a Windows certification if you like Windows. So either one of those is really good. Either one of those is a great cert. So not only do you need to consider your own personal goals and objectives, you also have to consider other companies' goals and objectives. And I mentioned this, I have a video that's in the YouTube video description of this video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. And it takes you through, it is a 30-minute video. It is chock full of information. It is no slouch, but it is worth watching if you're trying to come up with some strategies that you can use to get a job in IT without ever having a job in IT before. And I give you some ideas and some tips and tricks you might want to think about when it comes to deciding, what certification do I get next? One of the things I mentioned in there is you should see what employers are asking for. There's a good thing to know. Again, that's something I don't know. You have to look at the employers in your area, assuming that you're planning to work locally, and find out, maybe find 10 or 20 different jobs that are being posted in your area that would fit your knowledge, that you think you would be a good fit for that particular job. And look at the requirements for that job. Are they asking for a certification? What certification are they asking for? And you should create a spreadsheet that has a list of all of these. Every job you find, you should be listing out, what formal education are they asking for? What certifications are they asking for? What special knowledge are they looking for? What other types of things do they want? And you should list all of these out, because once you've gone through 10 or 20 of those, you can now look to see, is there one certification that everybody's asking for? Maybe a lot of people in your area would like you to have a Security Plus. Maybe nobody's asking for Security Plus. Well, that's a very different answer than if you came to me and said, what cert should I get? I go, well, go get Security Plus. And then you realize nobody in your area wants you to have a Security Plus. They aren't looking for that. Maybe they would like it if you had it, but they're not asking for it. Find out what they're asking for and see if there's a good middle ground. Maybe they're not looking for Linux, but they're looking for more of a networking cert. Or maybe they are looking for Windows. Maybe you could do some concentric diversification and take your knowledge of Linux and now learn everything you can about Windows. You're really just building on your foundation at that point. Maybe this is a good opportunity to learn everything you can about Mac OS. Are employers asking about that, or are they not? So these are questions that I can't answer for you unless we really sit down and talk about it for a long period of time, which none of us really have. It would be a good chance for you to sit down and do your own research and determine, do I have the right idea of where I would like to go with my career? Should I temper that with what other people would like me to do for my career? Is there a good middle ground? These are decisions that I can't make for you. Really, nobody can make those decisions for you. You're the one that needs to do that. So I think you should absolutely focus on that part of that world. The question Tyler asks is, if a person has an academic degree in IT, is it worth getting the A+, or should I go straight to Network Plus? We have an academic degree in IT. First, it's great that you were able to find somewhere that had an IT degree. I'd love to hear more, Tyler, about where you got the IT degree from. There's not a lot of IT degrees out there. Colleges and universities, especially four-year public universities, haven't quite caught on to the nuances of what IT really is, or they don't care about the nuances of IT. So they haven't really helped with getting any type of degrees along those lines. You tend to have to go to a more specialized program to get something that is an IT four-year degree. Otherwise, it probably is not purely an IT degree. At least that's what I've been seeing most recently. But there's a slow move, and hopefully universities will start coming along and getting us a more specific IT set of curriculum. So the question becomes, so if I already got the degree, do I really need the A+? Well, employers want a formal degree, certainly. But they also want industry certifications, and those two things are not swappable. You can't swap an industry certification for an academic degree or vice versa. Those are credentials that provide different things. So you need to be sure you understand what employers are looking for, and you will probably find that most employers want you to have both an academic degree and would like you to have an A+ as well, or we'd like you to have a Network Plus as well, or we'd like you to have Security Plus as well. You need to go ask those employers or find out from their website or their job posting, what do they want you to have? Ultimately, you will probably find that academic degrees are still an important credential. They are still in demand by employers. There's been a lot of talk most recently in the most recent years about, academic degrees don't have the value or the power they used to have. I'm not entirely sure that's true. I think they still have quite a bit of leverage when you walk into that room and have an interview. So get your academic degree, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or whatever it happens to be, and get some industry certifications. Why can't we do both? And you should. But you need to make sure you pick the right ones in both of those scenarios for someone who's trying to get that degree and work through the details of getting a technical career going. It's worth doing. As I've often mentioned, technical jobs, the information technology field in general, provides such flexibility and such financial benefit and such ability to use knowledge and expand on your career. And there's tons of growth. There's lots of great reasons to get into IT. So it's worth looking at and creating a strategy around. Just jumping into it and hoping you figure it out, probably not the best way to go into it, but some people have made that work too. Sometimes I in particular had very specific goals and objectives and certifications that I chose during my career. But one of the last jobs I had working for a third party was a phone call I got from an associate that I'd worked with years ago who said, "Hey, I heard about this job. You would be perfect for it. I'm going to go work in sales. You would be great as an engineer. Why don't we go check out this company?" And he was right. That just came out of the blue. Just a phone call I was not expecting from someone I had not talked to in years suddenly reached out to me. So sometimes I often talk about that as being a very lucky moment. But as many people will say, luck is something that really you make yourself. You have to prepare to be lucky. I needed to have all of that knowledge, experience, certifications, degrees, and everything that I had done in my career kind of led up to that call. Had I not done the work, he wouldn't have called me. I would not have been someone who would have worked in that particular job. So that's a case where sometimes you make your own luck. Sometimes you build up a foundation where you suddenly now have options. And there's really nothing better than options in your world. You want to have different things you can do. You never want to be stuck at any one place. You want to give yourself leverage. And this is a great way to have leverage. Make sure you're familiar with what those options might be. And maybe that's something that can help you decide, I've got this career, this formal IT 4-year degree that I have. How do I build a career from that? Do I need a certification? If so, what? Time for you to do some strategy work. Time for you to build that spreadsheet and figure out what would make the most sense for the employers in your area. Let's keep going through this list. We've got a lot here. Okay, let's talk about the last week of your studies. I get this question a lot, so I think it's a great one to talk about. Elliot hit it right on the nose and said, "I'm taking the 1201 on Sunday. I have been studying for months. What would be your recommendation for me to prepare myself this week?" Usually I get this question as somebody says, "Hey, it's 10 in the morning. I'm taking my exam at noon. What should I do?" Well, you got 2 hours left. There's not much advice I can give you at that point. But if you're taking the exam on Sunday, as we sit here and we are live, this is a Tuesday. This is a Tuesday, isn't it? It's a Tuesday. We're going to pretend it's Tuesday. So in this Tuesday, Sunday, we've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Did I do that right? We got 4 full days before Sunday gets here. We got a little bit more left in today. We got a little bit more left in Sunday, of course, but we got 4 full days to work on. This is the time where we need some type of checklist that will tell us everything that we could possibly be asked about on the exam. I wonder where we would find such a thing. Oh, that's right. We have the objectives. This is what you should be doing until Sunday. You should go through this list. You should start with the very first bullet and try to explain to yourself or to someone else that if given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques for a battery. What would that look like? What would that sound like? How would you do that? What about keyboards and keys? How do you monitor their use and replace them if you need to on a mobile device, on a laptop? What about a hard drive or a solid state drive? How would you do that? So our videos, of course, step through every single one of these bullets. Your books step through all of these bullets. You've probably gone through these many times. You should be able to explain to yourself or to someone else what that is. This is your checklist. If you want to know where you are weakest, this will show you. And weakest, that's an important thing to know, by the way. Well, it's such a bad thing to say, where you're weakest. It makes it seem like that's a negative. No. That's what you want to know. That's an important thing to have here. So mark all the things you don't know as red, things you sort of know as yellow, things you absolutely know as green, and now you have a color-coded list of where you should study over the next 4 full days. That's a great way to focus. And again, if you know every bullet that's in here, you're going to pass on Sunday, no problem. Maybe even 90% of this might be pretty good. They're obviously not going to ask you about every bullet in this list. They're going to ask you 90 questions, and there might be 100 different topics in that list of 90 questions, because sometimes they have multiple topics in a single question. So this is a really good place to go. The exam objectives have everything you need. It's like a magic list. It tells you everything. I have had people come to my site after their exam is over. They did not pass, and they say, I didn't pass my exam. They asked me crazy questions I was not ready for. I said, well, don't tell me what was on the exam, but what type of topics do you feel that you didn't know about when they were presented to you on the exam? And they said things like, well, they asked me about replacing a battery, and I wasn't ready for that. I thought, what? You know that, and I even said that's an exam objective. That is a bullet that is in the official exam objectives. Did you not see that in there? That was clearly in there. Battery replacement. That's absolutely on the list. They go, what list are you talking about? I thought it was just a broad list of objectives. In fact, they were referring to, if you go to the CompTIA website, is a good one for this. We're going to go to the CompTIA website right now. And for example, if we go to the certifications list, let's go to the certs because that's what we're going to do. They have all these certifications listed at the top of the screen. There's some listed down here. Since we're doing A+, I'm going to go to A+. We're going to go to their A+ page. On their A+ page, they have this Core 1 exam objective summary. And I think people are going to this and they're seeing, oh, the first one is on hardware setup, installing components like batteries, cameras, and Wi-Fi antennas. It's just a broad overview of these topics. This is not what I'm talking about. These are not the objectives. This is just a summary of the objectives. And obviously there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bullets on that list. There's what, maybe 20 here? Not even in this list. So scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and scroll down to this red box. If you do not see a red box on the screen, you need to disable your filters, disable your cookie blockers, disable anything you have that would filter out things from your screen. Turn those off because this has to show up. So you can put in your email address, click access now. I guess I have to submit that I agree to the privacy notice, and then access now. And now I can download the objectives directly from this page. There you go. Yes, people in the chat room are even saying, yep, I'm in a browser that by default filters everything. Well, yeah, of course you're not going to see it. People say, I don't see it because I'm filtering. You should not filter. There you go. Problem solved. Yes, you're filtering. That's why you're not seeing it on the screen. That's a perfect question for the exam. A user in their browser is not able to see a red box on their screen on a website. What is the most likely reason this red box is not appearing? A, B, see, there's your answer. You have to now troubleshoot the process. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe you should only pass the exam if you can, at least at the very beginning, see this red box. So they've got the exam objectives right here. You can download them. That is a perfect way to spend your next 4 days. That will tell you exactly where you are the weakest. It will tell you where you're the strongest. And you'll know that you are studying information that could absolutely appear on the exam. Make sure you are familiar with that. That will help you quite a bit when you get into the details of these exams. And if you only got until Sunday, that's where you should go. You've already watched the videos. You've already read your book. You've done some labs. You've probably done some practice questions. Do as many practice questions and hit the objectives. And there's your focus over the next 4 or so days. And you'll do fine. You're going to pass this exam. You're going to come back and say, yep, we did it. I spent time. I studied the topics. I knew what was expected of me. I walked into the exam and there was no hesitation at all. Boom. Got that one down. You can move to the next certification to go to. Let's go through some more questions that you might have on your screen. We got a lot here to go through. This is a pretty good one because I've dealt with this. Obviously, this is part of the exam as well. This is from a good friend, Anonymous, who asks, what are the must-know Windows tools for A+ troubleshooting? Event Viewer, Device Manager, Disk Management, Services, Task Manager, and what's the fastest way to practice them? Well, here you go. You've probably not heard this from me before, but I'm going to bring up, since this is really a question about the 1202 exam. This is really about the Core 2 exam. Let me give you a Core 2 answer for this exam because I think that's an important part as well. Obviously, we will be doing an entire Core 2 study group on Friday, but I'll take any question you have in the after show. As you well know, I have no problem answering any questions you have about any of the certifications that happen to be out there and what we are doing with them. So for this one, you might be surprised by this. You go to the exam objectives. You knew I was going to say that. You knew where that was going. This is for the 1202 objectives. This is a little bit different than the one we were just looking at. But in here, you will find section 1.4 that says, given a scenario, use Microsoft Windows operating system features and tools. They list out all of the tools you need to know. Task Manager, the Microsoft Management Console, Device Manager, Certificate Manager, Event Viewer, Disk Management, Task Scheduler. These are all in here. And one of the things you'll notice in our course is we do tell you what these are, but for all of these, we also demonstrate what they do. So you've got a section where it's kind of a lecture-y sort of, here's Device Manager, here's what it does, here's why it's important. Let's look at it. Getting that hands-on is an important part of this. So if you have a version of Windows that you can load up, that's a great way to do it. If you're not a Windows user, maybe you're a Linux user, maybe you're a Mac OS user, you should install Windows. Well, that's a fine question. If you don't have Windows, where are you going to install Windows from? Fortunately, Microsoft provides evaluation versions of Windows, and that would be a perfect way to load it up. Some people even use different versions of Windows. There is a Windows 11 Enterprise version. Obviously, Enterprise is the higher end version. It's not the home version. It's not the pro version. This is the one that would be installed in many Enterprise, but you can get started for free. You can download the ISO, load up Windows 11 Enterprise, and you can run Device Manager, and you can run Certificate Manager, and you can run Event Viewer, and you can run Performance Manager. You can do all of this and see the difference between all of those different utilities. I think it'd be a great little lab to go through and just go through each one of those bullets, load up that particular app, but most importantly, understand what you are looking at. Just running the app, yep, there it is, close it out. That doesn't help you. You need to understand, when would you use that utility? What is it showing me? And how can I use that to help troubleshoot the network? So the tools are available to you. They're there for free. They're out there in the world. And the exam objectives tell you everything that you need to know. And of course, if it's not in the exam objectives, you don't need to know that utility, because there's a lot of utilities in Windows, but not all of them are important for this particular exam. They might be important for you in the future, but that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to get you certified. Don't worry about the things that aren't in the exam objectives. That's not your problem. It'll be a problem later. We'll worry about that later once we have our A+ certification that's in our pocket. We'll be working through it. We got some time for a couple more. Let's keep going through this list and have this breakdown of what we are doing. Here's an interesting question, because it's one that I don't get asked all the time, but I do get quite a bit of references to this. This is also from Anonymous, who asks, what troubleshooting habits make you look professional fast? The answer might surprise you. That just sounds like clickbait right there. So for instance, ticketing notes, user questions, reproducing issues, escalation thresholds. This is the one type of characteristic, the thing that gets the most attention when it comes to information technology, and the actual answer might surprise you, is communication. It is not just making sure that you communicate with others, because just saying communicate with others, well, we're doing that now. That doesn't necessarily mean this is a high quality, high value communication. There are things you have to do to be able to make yourself someone who has that professional view, is to make sure that these topics are communicated well. This can sometimes be a challenge with technical people. I did not start my career as a great communicator in IT. These are skills you have to learn over time. So I went to training classes specifically to teach you how to talk to people. At the time, I was working as a systems engineer. We were selling our technologies to other people. How do you teach technical people how to talk to other human beings? That was effectively the course that I took. And so you learn about looking at people. You learn about how to communicate, how to hold your hands. Where do you hold your hands? Do you hold your hands? Do you put them at your side? What do you do? How do you structure and communicate to people? How do you talk to people? At what times do you not talk to people? And then what is the process that you use? It's interesting because a lot of people use a lot of abbreviations, a lot of shortcuts. You'll notice this is listed in the exam objectives for CompTIA, is they talk about not using a lot of abbreviations when trying to communicate with people because other people don't know our acronyms. Other people don't understand these crazy terms we use. And you'll notice in my training courses and in my practice exams books and other places, whenever I use an acronym, at least for the first time, I like to spell it out. And I think when you're talking with other people, it's sometimes good to spell these things out rather than to use the acronym so that people know what we're talking about. You're not trying to dumb it down. You're not trying to make it as if a 5-year-old could understand what you're trying to say, but you want to be sure that other adults in your organization are following the line of thought that you have about the problem that you're trying to solve. So this is a good place, I think, that people need to spend some extra time on how they write, on their grammar, on their ability to put a sentence together, use capitalization. There's this thing in the English language we use called punctuation. It's remarkable how many messages I have received in my career from other technical people, especially technical people that are located in a different company, and I can't really figure out what they're trying to say. That's very disjointed. They're using terms I'm not familiar with because they're internal terms to their organization, and it doesn't move the process along. So one of the things I found very quickly is if you are able to communicate to people, if you're able to be a translator of the technical world into the human world, if you spend your time learning the fundamentals of presentation, learning the fundamentals of grammar, of just using capitalization when you should, goes a long way. It really does. It is, and I say this with a smile because it's remarkable how many messages I get that are not structured well, that do not move us along in the right direction. And I think if you spend your time on both the technical side and the communication side, that is a valuable combination. A valuable combination. I literally had, for years of my career, a job where my job on Monday was to get on a plane, fly to a city, present in front of a bunch of people, usually at a trade show or something like that. So there'd be 500 people. I'd show my presentation. We'd talk about technology. I'd leave the stage, go back to the airport, go to another city, to another one where there's another 500 people, and do this presentation again. And that was me. I was simply presenting, taking questions, representing the company, and being the communicator for these technologies. And they wanted me to do this because I understood the technical side well enough that if a question came up about the broader story we were telling, and somebody says, yeah, but what about the ones and zeros? I could talk to the ones and zeros, but I could do it in a way that brought everybody else along. Those are important skills. And there's an entire section of the A+ exam that you've already seen that talks about professionalism, and another section that talks about communication. And I think a lot of people, they sort of wave their hand at it and say, well, of course it's important to communicate. It's sure, it's important to be professional. We know that. We don't need to know anything else about those things. We're good. In reality, though, we could all spend a little bit of extra time on professionalism, how to write an email. How do you write a good email? How do you present something well? How do you just take one slide of a presentation and present it well? Those are good things to know. So I think if you're someone who is working towards a broader career where you want more flexibility, you want higher level positions in an organization, you want to bring together the best of the technical world and kind of blend that together with opportunities, communication is the key. So I think if you're troubleshooting, if you're working with other people, and you're not working with a bunch of computers, you're working with other humans, you need to speak to humans, not just speak to the people that are doing the technology part of it. And I think if you can combine those two things together, it is remarkable how you're able to transition your career one direction or another. Because once you become comfortable speaking, and I will tell you, once I started speaking in front of these large crowds, it's really difficult. I get really nervous walking into these large crowds, especially at the beginning. You have to practice it. You have to learn it. It's something that is an important skill that takes time to learn, and you have to practice it. And you will not be good at it when you start. You will be awful. I had some horror stories starting off, trying to get all of this speaking to people and communicating. I was in the back of a taxi in New York trying to talk to industry analysts. I'm on my way to JFK or wherever I was going. I was going to an airport, and I'm in the back of a cab, and I'm trying to talk, and I've got these notes because I've never gone through this content with another human being before, but I'd practiced the night before, and we start talking, and I drop the notes all over the floor of the taxi, which of course was pristine. The taxi was so clean in New York. So I picked up the notes, but now they're in the wrong order, and the whole story I had, now I'm thrown off. Now it was the worst call ever, to the point that I hung up with the analyst. I stumbled through the call. I hung up with the analyst. I called my boss and I said, okay, we may not be working together after today. I may have ruined everything for all of us. And she talked me down and said, no, you're fine. You're good. I know you did okay. Was it 100%? Maybe not, but it wasn't awful. So we kept the whole thing going. We got better at it. I got more practice. I talked to more people. I talked to more analysts. And finally, you get to a point where you're now just talking to someone else. It no longer becomes a third party where you're worried about the conversation, where there's anxiety. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. And you just talk to people and you learn more about the process, but it takes practice to get to that. So I've seen these people talking, these folks that are doing large presentations in front of thousands of people. That was not their first presentation. That was their 1,000th presentation. And they've just become so comfortable in the role, they know how to do it. So don't be thrown or concerned that I can't do that. I can't talk to people that way. I don't understand how that, I get too nervous. That's okay. You will be, and it'll be difficult starting out, but hone your skills, get better at what you are doing, and you will get to a point where it just becomes second nature. You're able to write these very good emails because you've practiced and practiced and practiced how to write these very good emails. So that's my recommendation to you as well, is that practice on those. Take the idea of learning the technology and running with that, but also take the idea of learning the communication skills, run with those as well. Spend as much time on communication as you do technology, and it will serve you extremely well through every career you ever run into, not even in IT, but any career that you happen to fall into. Let's keep going through this list. I love this one. This is the one I'm going to probably see in my dreams and my nightmares, is people say all the time, oh, I like those certification exams, but all the gotcha questions, there's a bunch of trick questions on this exam. And I looked through the exam questions when I got it, and I thought, there's nothing here was a trick question. Trick questions are when they're asking you one thing, but they really want you to answer something else. They're asking you about a color, but they're really looking for a number. They're tricking you in the question. What I've seemed to have found in the many years of doing this is that a trick question is defined as one that I didn't know the answer to. That ultimately is what a trick question is. There's no trick there. The trick was you didn't know the answer. You didn't understand the topic. Therefore, the question sure seemed like a trick question. There are no trick questions. And as we say here, which CompTIA questions are usually gotchas, and what's the best way to recognize them fast? If you find a gotcha question on your exam, if you find a question on your practice exam that you feel is a trick question, and it's one that I wrote, it's not a trick question. It's not. It's a question about a topic that maybe you missed the nuance in the question about what was being asked. For example, in an earlier question today, I asked about installing and working with a wireless network, with an 802.11 network? And the answer had something to do with wireless technology. Well, that's a trick. You didn't ask us about wireless in the question. You asked us about 802.11 or vice versa. You asked about wireless and the answer was about 802.11. Yes, that's not a trick. We want you to link those things together. It's important that you know those. It's important that you know that those are similar technologies. Those work together. Those are the same thing, wireless and 802.11. That's not a trick. But you need to know those links, and you need to, and that's why I tell people all the time, don't spend your time memorizing abbreviations. For example, since we're here, let's go back to our exam objectives. Let's go to the exam objectives for the 1101. In the back of the exam objectives document is this acronym list. There's pages of acronyms in here. So people often do maybe a flashcard. AAA stands for authentication, authorization, and accounting. In fact, there's a quad A in here, and they have listed authentication, authorization, accounting, and auditing. No, that's not how we use quad A. That's more of a DNS quad A. That has nothing to do with this term that's here. Maybe ACL, access control list. People spend their time memorizing. ACL is access control list. Access control list is ACL. Okay, what is that? Knowing the abbreviation and knowing the definition or the term and the words associated with those letters is somewhat important, but it's more important that you understand how are these technologies used. What is an ACL? Where would I see or be able to work with an ACL? And how is this technology used on our networks today? So acronyms are more than just the letters and the words. You need to understand the whole thing. Now, some of these are pretty straightforward. For example, BSOD, which you can't see on my screen because I'm not there. So BS, let's move this back to a bigger view. So if we go down here to BSOD, it stands for blue screen of death. All right, we know what that is. So if you know the acronym in that case, you sort of know what it's referring to. But others in here, perhaps not. Things like AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. What are you talking about? Where does that fit? Unless you know that that has to do with logging into the network, with being able to gain access to resources, with being able to log when somebody logs in and logs out. You're looking at an event log. What created that event log? AAA created it. When somebody logged in, they used their username and password that's associated with every service that they use. How were they able to do that? They were able to do that with AAA. So being able to tie in the technology with the acronym is extremely important for these exams. And if you don't have that tie-in, it may very well seem like every question is a trick question because you're not able to put together, link together the scope of all these things. They need to mesh together. You need to have a very, very good perspective of that. Another term that I often hear that's emailed to me is, I know what the actual answers are, but what are the CompTIA answers? As if CompTIA lives in some different reality. On the CompTIA Earth, in that universe, here's the answer. But in our universe, the answer is different. It doesn't work that way. The CompTIA answers are the actual answers. The CompTIA answers are the ones that are the technical, correct answers. So there are no CompTIA answers. There is no such thing. There isn't. And as I've always said, if you feel that something in the exam objectives is not applicable to today's technologies, if you feel that it doesn't fit into the scope as to how it's being used in the exam versus how it's used in reality, let me know. So far, nobody's ever sent one of those to me. I've not seen anybody that's been able to bring up, here's a CompTIA answer, and here's the actual answer. Very often it's one where maybe somebody doesn't know the technology, they don't understand how it's applied, they don't know how it's used, and maybe that's an opportunity for us to talk about that, and that's fantastic to be able to do it. But if you find a question and you're thinking, that's a trick question, I would highly advise you to go read through the topics associated with that question and just see how tricky it really is. I think you'll probably find it is not so much. Another great idea to break those down and have an understanding of them. Well, I think it brings us to a good place to finish. Top of the hour. We went a little over time. I hope that's okay. A little bit after the top of the hour, but I think it worked out. We had a great first hour answering questions from the Core 1 exam. Thank you so much for being here and participating in our interactive Q&A. Perhaps even more importantly, thank you for submitting questions for the after show. Otherwise, it'd just be a very quick after show, which maybe isn't so bad, but I think we could do some better things than just hang out here and look at each other. Having your questions makes it so much more important, and it gives us a chance to kind of talk about the industry and talk about where we should be thinking strategically, a broader perspective of where we would like our career to go, where we'd like, how we would like to be able to support our family in the future, what type of technologies we should focus on. These are questions and decisions you will be making throughout your entire career, not just today. And it's an idea and a scope you should be getting into to be able to do this. We'd love for you to stop back by on Friday at noon Eastern. We're doing another one of these study groups. It will be for the A+ Core 2 exam. I haven't even written the questions yet. So please come back, maybe just to see if I have any questions for you. Spoiler alert, I will have questions for you. We'll have all of those available to you on Friday. We get to hang out on a Friday afternoon and see if we happen to know what we need to know for our Core 2 exam to finish up for our A+ certification so that you can have an absolutely amazing 2026. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.